In this video, I'm going to elaborate more on the experiments in the Roberts et al. 2020. Researchers reported 7 experiments in the article. They did collected more data, which are all available on the Open Science platform listed below. The reason I introduced this study in details is because I would like you to learn more about research method for social science. So here we go. In study 1, participants were asked about their conceptions of God. There were roughly 100 white male, 100 white female, 100 black male, and 100 black female Christians as participants, and they completed 2 tasks. The first one is forced choice among faces, that they have to choose the one that looks most like God. While the second one is a direct measure asking the participants, do you think God is black or white, male or female? Results showed that all participants portrayed God more as men than women, but white Christians reported God to be more white than black, while black Christians reported God to be more black than white. Study 2 examined whether conceptualizing God as white men predicted the belief that white male job candidates are best fit to lead. There were around 240 participants in each category: white male, white female, black male, and black female. Participants completed the indirect and direct measures same as study 1. Then they completed a distractor task. And then comes to the third task, where they were instructed to imagine that they were working for a company that was looking for a new supervisor. 32 job candidates' faces were shown, and participants were asked to evaluate how much these candidates fit the position. Results replicated study 1, where white participants are more likely to conceptualize God as white men, and black participants are more likely to conceptualize God as black men. But no matter participants are black or white, the extent that their beliefs that God is a white man does predict the conception of white men as more fit for the leadership. And the extent of how they portray God as white man predict the leader as white man is stronger among black participants. Study 3 examined how U.S. Christian children of diverse racial backgrounds conceptualize God's social identity, and the extent to which these conceptions predicted the conception of leadership worthiness. So exactly the same effect, but taking a developmental perspective using children's sample. The study collected data from about 20 white boys, 20 white girls, 30 racial minority boys, and 30 racial minority girls. Age varies from 4 to 12. To measure children's conception of God's identity, researchers asked them to choose from pictures, like the indirect measure from studies 1 and 2. As well as draw a picture of God on a piece of paper. Over 200 adults were also recruited to evaluate the pictures to determine the race and gender. The researchers did ask adult evaluator what do they think the kids are drawing, and 17 of them guessed God, so their results were excluded because researchers don't want the opinions influence their evaluation of the drawings. Then they measure who these kids conceptualize as boss-like among job candidates. Results showed that both racial majority and minority children conceptualized God as more white than black and more male than female. It is interesting that racial minority group kids conceptualize God as more white and might have a shift across development to have different conceptualization of in-group race as God figure. It also found that the extent to which children conceptualize God as white predicted their conceptions of white people as more like a boss. However, the conception of God as male did not predict conceptions of men as more like a boss than women. This demonstrates a racial hierarchy but not gender hierarchy. What's interesting is that among these kids, older children were more likely to conceptualize God as male than younger children. The first 3 studies are testing the correlations. Well, starting from study 4, researchers manipulated to attribute an identity to a god and tested whether this causally predicted conceptions of leadership. In US, the beliefs about God as white man is so pervasive, even young children endorse this conception. So this study is in a novel context with novel groups and a novel God. To confirm that God figure is such a strong image in US, researchers first tested using US sample where some participants were randomly assigned to one of the two conditions and they reacted to a painting by either first Italian artist Michelangelo, God is depicted as a white man, or a painting by Afro-Cuban artist Harmonia Rosales, where God is depicted as a black woman. After exposed to these images, participants showed no difference in their conception of God's identity. But the comments for the black woman is so negative and disrespectful. That's why the researchers choose a new context, groups, and God. So here is the context in this study. There is a planet called Zumboldt, on which there lived two kinds of creatures, Hibbos and Glurks, who both prayed to Likbar, the creator, who they believed to be Hibbo. Participants were randomly assigned to one of the three conditions, in which Likbar, the creator, was identified as Hibbo, as Glurk, or as neither Hibbo or Glurk, an alien. Results indicated US Christians use information about the God's identity to make inference about who is and should be in leadership. Then Study 5 replicated Study 4 using US atheists as samples. Results indicated even among participants who do not believe in God, beliefs about a God's identity predicts who is and should be in leadership. Study 6 and Study 7 tested the reverse question. Do beliefs about who is in leadership predict beliefs about the God's identity? Majority of the Fortune 500 companies as well as presidents in the United States are white men. Does this influence their perceptions of God's identity? Experiments demonstrated causality for both directions, that people use God's identity to infer who was in leadership, and who was in leadership to infer a God's identity. Study 7 replicated the results in Study 6 using agnostic preschoolers, those who had never heard of God. Results demonstrated that among agnostic preschoolers, the causal arrow moved only in one direction. A God's identity predicted conceptions of who was in leadership, but who was in leadership did not predict the conceptions of a God's identity. So in summary, across 7 studies, there is a consistent pattern attributing a social identity to God, predicts perceiving individuals who share the identity as particularly fit to lead. This research project at least proved the link in the US culture and has some indications about the notions of white superiority. The concept of God as white also reinforced the societal hierarchy in US. At the end, I have some questions for you to think about. If the societal hierarchy is so deeply rooted, what can be done to really break it? And what do you observe in your culture? Thank you.